thank you for sticking around just to kind of explain the Second Amendment point that I was going to make, and we can maybe jump off from there, is I view the obstacle to this as this sort of sanctified, like I said, sanctified vision of the Second Amendment where it just can't be touched. Guns are the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is guns. That's all there is to it. We have a constitutional right. End of story. Don't talk to me about it anymore. We're done. It's over. And you kind of wish that the folks that believe that believe the same about the Fourth Amendment, believe the same about the Fifth Amendment, believe the same about the Sixth Amendment, and believe the same, honestly, about the First Amendment. Because all of those amendments that I just listed off, free speech and the rest of them, search and seizure, right to a lawyer, due process of law, right to a jury trial, all that kind of stuff, going on to the Eighth Amendment with bail and cruel and unusual punishment, all the rest of it, all of those rights have been shredded by exceptions and certain kinds of government regulation. With like for example, we don't have true free speech in this country wherever we feel like it all the time, 100% of the time, at least in the broadcast media, because there are time, place, and manner restrictions on speech. There have been forever. The big Fourth Amendment decision that just came down from the Supreme Court that says that they can use illegally obtained evidence now. I mean, that's a very, very simplified version of this, but that the cops can use evidence from illegal stops at this point. It was basically how it boils down, which is a huge blow to unreasonable search and seizure in the Fourth Amendment. There are all these sorts of things that conservatives agree with, that liberals tend to agree with, unfortunately, that folks that in their day-to-day life who aren't doing anything wrong don't worry about the cops busting into your house without a warrant. They just don't think about it. I wish that the same consideration could be paid to the Second Amendment, because the Second Amendment is the only one, at least that I know of, that the folks that support it say that it can't be touched, that it can't be infringed or what, to use that kind of like as a fundamental right. And it's the only amendment that supports the usage of a tool that can kill people.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to speak for a lot of the conservative friends that I have. I agree with you 100%, Lefty. I wish that the courts would quit legislating from the bench, because that's what we have now. I wish that the courts would do what they're supposed to do, which is, this is unconstitutional, go back and rewrite it so it is. I agree with Lefty. But the people that are up in arms about the Second Amendment are up in arms about the Second Amendment because they see what has happened to the other amendments. Just like
that's not no.
Now you're talking about. Oh, good golly! I don't know what I got on me. Now you just got done saying you wish conservatives. What we do, we don't like all this other stuff. The problem is there's nobody else out there that can get everybody together like Second Amendment activists. We don't want the Constitution to be changed fundamentally, and that's what has happened. We agree with that.
The only conservative thinker that I've ever heard that was against the evisceration of the Fourth Amendment, and at least in my mind, Antonin Scalia. That's it. He hated it. He was a law and order conservative of the tradition of law and order conservatives. The conservative court that tossed out basically just had the worst this last decision. All conservative justices supported it. There is no big time conservative support for the Fourth. I mean, you had conservative thinkers talking about getting rid of the right to have counsel. It just for folks that are charged with crimes.
We need to stop.
That's what I'm talking about.
Just here. Because what has happened is liberal judges get appointed over conservative objections, and truly conservative justices like Antonin Scalia. This is why his loss was so terrible. And now you have a lot of people going, well, the Constitution is a flexible document. And I don't want it to be that way.
But what
you should be able to go to the people and make those changes. Do we need these changes and put it to a vote and then see if it's constitutional? But we have legislation from the bench.
Where I don't know where you've been for the last 30 years if you think that liberal justices have been appointed over conservative ones. You've had an extremely conservative court since the 70s. Extremely.
But that's from a perspective. That isn't, if you look at, Scalia said it best. The Constitution says what it says and doesn't say what it doesn't say. That, to me, is strict constitutionalism. That's what we need to have back. And we have not elected or appointed anybody that has that approach except for Scalia. Judge Roberts, he's not, if you're looking at a conservative, he's truly not that much of a conservative. He may join in on the conservative side, but what you're talking about is a false construct so that people can say, oh, well, they're liberal and they're conservative. Well, it's much more liberal historically now than it had been back in the 1880s or even when we started. They had strict constitutionalists. Now, you're more of a jurist than I am.
Those labels didn't break down that way in the 1800s. We haven't worried about whether or not the court was liberal or conservative, at least in the way we think about it, until very recently.
And basically, that's my point.
Basically, the New Deal court, which ruled against FDR against everything starting out until basically he threatened them with court packing, and they kind of got him back in line. We didn't see a liberal shift on the court until the 60s, when the mid 50s into the 60s, and then it swung back to conservative in the 70s and 80s. This idea that we've had a liberal court making liberal decisions is just crazy, especially if you think about it in terms of corporate rulings against small business or against the working people. We've had liberal appointed judges and conservative appointed judges making those kinds of rulings for a long time. So we can it's not red or blue, it's green that rules the court sometimes. But I guess my point about this is not so much what the court has done, but where is the outcry for the I don't know. It's too political. I can't even talk about it in a politically relevant way because we get bent out of shape about free speech rights until the speech isn't what we want it to be. We get bent out of shape about freedom of religion until it's not our religion that we're trying to protect anymore. We get bent out of shape about the due process of law until that due process becomes something a little cumbersome, and now we just kind of want to take shortcuts. And that's what we've seen, in my opinion, for a long time is just this political expediency. And that's leading to things like Donald Trump, who is the most politically expedient of politicians. He doesn't care. And the folks, the Brexit, they can roll it all into one thing. It's we're tired of the hard work. We're tired of doing the hard work, and the court has been complicit in that for years. That's kind of my point.
Yeah, well, and I agree with Lefty's basic idea. Not that he's a lefty. We'll be back right after this break. We're going to wrap it up. We're going to talk about Brexit. We're going to talk about impact on American politics. We're going to talk about, how social media is complicit in a lot of the stupid stuff that's going on lately. We're going to be back right after this break. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We couldn't do